Disclaimer: the We Are One podcast aims to shed light on the abuse experience within the Independent Fundamental Baptist Church. The stories shared are from survivors who bravely recount their personal experiences. It is important to note that unless an abuser has been convicted in a court of law, they are presumed innocent until proven guilty. The podcast does not serve as a legal judgment, but rather as a platform for survivors to share their truth.
Now let's get into today's episode. Here is your host, Olivia.
Welcome back to the We Are One podcast. I'm your host, Olivia. To kind of finalize our Hyles series and just kind of have more of an open discussion about Hyles-Anderson and Jack Hyles and First Baptist Church of Hammond, I thought it was very important for our next guest to come on because she has been the most recent Hyles-Anderson student in a way, alumni, if you want to call her that, to come on and share a little bit about her experience. And so I was like, okay, this is perfect because after getting off the phone with you, I was like, this just proves that this is still going on and it's 2025. So I'm really excited to have you on. So hello, how are you?
Hi everyone. Hi, Olivia.
So I guess to, start off with the episode, can you, start by sharing a little bit about, what brought you to Hyles-Anderson? Were you what was your expectations going in?
So first of all, my name is Grace and I wasn't raised in the IFB. I was raised Christian, but we kind of church hopped and everything, and so I wasn't really exposed to the IFB until I was in high school or going into high school, and my parents were going through a divorce, and so through all of that, my dad started taking us to an IFB church, and that's when I found out about Hyles, because we would go to the youth conferences and everything, and I had fun. I liked it. It was something different, and I feel with the stress of your parents went through a divorce, with all that, as a young person, you're really looking for something to be a part of, and I was super involved. I would go soul winning and everything. So anyway, some people at my church were like, "Oh, you should attend Hyles." They were Hyles graduates, and there are some people at that church that my dad goes to that are not they don't like Hyles, but there's definitely a lot of people that I don't think they're malicious. I just think they drinking the Kool-Aid and everything. So that's how I found out about Hyles.
Okay. Yeah, and either about Hyles or about First Baptist Church of Hammond, or you just know both, because some people, a lot of our my listeners, they're either alumni or they just know of Hyles because he was, a well-known IFB pastor. So what were some of your expectations going in? Did you go to college days? What was the process like, if so?
I didn't go to college days, but I had visited the college with a lady from my church. She's an older lady, and I nothing against her. It was nice of her to drive me over there and everything. And I met one of the college staff members' wives, and she had actually given me a job opportunity to illustrate a book for her, which was really nice. But I was like, oh, since I'm illustrating this book and everything, I might as well go here. And I really just was super passionate about God and finding God's will and having purpose. So I was hoping to go there and find that, and then also find a godly man. In my head, I was like, oh, I'm gonna find a godly man here.
Yeah, your MRS degree, girl. Yeah. Would you say attending Hyles, since you were not used to the IFB, what kind of pressure was on it for you as a woman?
So funny thing, when I came to Hyles, I had short hair, a guy haircut, I guess you consider it, but feminized and stylized. So none of the staff members really said anything about it, but it was kind of like my one close friend now, she was like, oh, I don't know about her, she seems like she could be rebellious. But then I think when people got to know me there, they were like, I don't think she's rebellious, you know.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to seem rebellious. I wanted to like do everything right. I think my first year there, I don't think I got any points or demerits, except maybe like a few times, but I was like a try hard.
Yeah. What kind of pressures though, like was because like I've talked with a lot of Hyles alumni throughout from the 80s to 90s to early 2000s, 2010s, and like now obviously you from 2024. Um, and there's still the patterns of, you know, being the good, godly Christian woman and, you know, doing this and doing that, or having the, I guess in the way, the Bible sermons and stuff like that, and the preaching,
Mm-hmm.
um, definitely towards women. What would you say, are they the same compared to other, you know, alumni, or have they changed? You know, I think a lot of people, they look at like Wilkerson, for example, they look at him as like this guy came in and he's changed
Mm-hmm.
so much better because he's like, you know, not as strict compared to what Jack Hyles would have been like, or Scott or whatever, you know, whatever. So I'm curious, how was it though in 2024 attending Hyles as a woman?
Yeah. Well, first I want to say, like, when I came there, I didn't know about any of like really the controversy. I heard people saying like Pastor Wilkerson drained the swamp, you know, and like hush hush, Jack, stop. Do you know about that kind of? Um, as a woman, a lot of the girls would like complain like, oh, the guys get to stay up, the guys don't have to like fill out all these passes to go do this, go do that. And at first I was like hearing the girls like kind of complaining about it, like, oh, we don't get to go out. I like, even when I was young, like before I came to college, I didn't go a lot. I didn't really go out anyway. I didn't have a car or anything, so I was like kind of used to it, you know. But there's definitely like a lot of more rules on the girls than there is the guys.
Do you guys still have like curfews and stuff, or have they lifted?
Yeah, so the girls, they have to be back by 10, like from work. If they do work past that, they have to fill out a work pass. And I don't think it was the same for the guys. The guys would be out like till early in the morning at doing whatever, working, I don't know.
Yeah. Um, what were some classes that you took at Hyles?
So initially I wanted to do media because they have a media program there. So that's one thing that they do have, like a little more opportunities for women. Like women can do media, women can do teaching, and then of course there were some of those girls that can do like the marriage and motherhood courses or whatever. So I started doing some media classes, and then a little bit later on I did more teaching classes. And then there were like classes like child rearing, and it was only for girls. There were sewing classes only for girls, even though I had a guy friend who wanted to do it. But they said no, this is just for girls. This is a girl thing. There were cooking classes, and I'm not sure, but I think those were also just for women.
It makes me laugh so hard. Like, God forbid a guy know how to sew on a button, or
Yeah.
God forbid a guy likes to cook, and
Yeah.
that mindset that they have that, you know, it's a woman's job. I mean, oh man, it's comical to me, but it's also very fear, right? Like you are in this environment and it's very controlling and very, you do it this and this, and if not, then you're not a good Christian, you know, woman. And then it's, well, if you're not a good Christian woman, then you're not going to be a good Christian wife, and no man is going to want you. And then that pressure,
Yeah.
having to be perfect, it can dwell on anyone. I mean, I've had my fair shares of thinking, oh my goodness, I did something, now God's going to do something to me, right? Like that fear based. Um,
Mm-hmm.
would you say there was a lot of fear based in like the classes, or like just Bible sermons?
Um, yeah. Well, I always think of this example. This was this wasn't necessarily a class, but this was like we had to go to the conferences at First Baptist, you know, because there's Hyles and then separate First Baptist. And I always remember, I think this was like a missions conference message where like if you're called to the missions and you don't go, something bad's gonna happen to you. And I remember this always sticks out to me, this story about this guy that he had 2 kids and a wife, and his wife was like, I don't really want to go to the mission field, it sounds dangerous, it sounds hard. And something happened, like one of his kids got bit by a snake and the other one got hit by a car. So a lot of stories like that, and so it scares you, you know. And there's like there's thousands of examples of stories like fear tactic stories like that. It's kind of weird.
I often wonder how accurate those are.
Yeah, where
there is so many sermons out there within the IFB, not just Hyles, but that, the theology and the ideology that they share, there's always a fear-based story to follow up with something. So like for growing up, like for me, like in the youth group, it was always, well, do you want to go to a football game on a Friday night, or do you want to go to a youth rally? And if you don't go to the youth rally, well, then something's going to happen to you if you go to the football game. So like,
yeah,
I was always terrified of something, whether that was like, oh, if I leave the football game, am I going to get a wreck and die? And it's like, oh my gosh, at 16, I was worried about that. Like, that's just insane. It's not healthy. It's very, control based and fear. And so I often wonder, though, how many IFB pastors, one, use the same stories in sermons, and two, how accurate they are, because I feel like most of them are just rail you in with the manipulation and fear based. Not saying that all of them are lying, right? There might be a story out there, whatever, for a good example, but that fear based is what I'm talking about, with like the needing to fear God, right? And it's just not healthy. It's really not healthy for anyone's faith.
And another thing is, it's not even like fear for yourself. For example, at Hyles, like they really the bus route. And I remember this other example where this guy, he was actually my division leader for a little bit. He brought out some kids that were going to City Baptist. City Baptist is like the school where the bus kids go to. Like there's Hammond Baptist, that's where the church kids go to, and then the bus kids go to. People will know what I'm talking about if they know.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, I have, I've never been to Hyles or whatever, but I know what you're talking about, because a lot of people even said, like, looking at that, that's a division, right? That is like, it's so divided. It's like these Circle City kids, these kids that come on the bus, they cannot influence our sweet, innocent children. So what we're gonna do is we're still gonna give them opportunity. Like, talk about like discrimination. I feel like talk about, like, where's the diversity? Where's the really good Christ-like behavior? Like, Jesus didn't do that. Like, it's insane. But yes, so they have those.
He brought out some kids from a class there. I think he's also, anyway, they brought out, I think he also works there, but anyway, he brought out these kids, and he's like, these kids, they wouldn't be here without you guys. You guys are doing this. And to go along with that, it's like, if you're not on bus route, if you don't do that extra hour, if you skip a day, someone's probably going to go to hell, stuff like that.
Or if I look up and during altar call, will someone not get saved, and is it my fault? That fear-based. Talk a little bit about the bus ministry. How is that like in 2024? Because, back in the day, they had so many buses. I mean, they rented buses. It would be a whole day event on which bus went here for this, hour, and some of them would stay all day. Is this still like that, or?
So your weekend is, you wake up like at 6, you get on the bus at 7 or 8, you drive to City Baptist, the school I mentioned for the bus kids. You have a little meeting, you're super tired, and then you have to be clapping and happy and singing, and then you listen to a little pep talk, and then you go onto your Pacific bus. And they still do have a lot of buses, but a lot of them aren't being used. They're just kind of like sitting around at the church parking lot or Hyles parking lot. You get on your bus, you go out, you knock on people's doors, people that have promised that they would, or showed interest in church, or they've been to church before. This is like around 10 a.m. you're doing this. So you visit all your regulars, and then after that you do some soul winning in Chicago. And also, this is another thing. The girls, it's like 2 to 3 to 4 like girls in a group walking by themselves. They can't be around any male students, unless it's all like meeting at the bus. So it's like, you care so much about our protection with other things, but here we are wandering the streets of Chicago. And there was like a time a dog almost got us, but it got hit by a car, luckily. Which I shouldn't say luckily, but it was gonna attack us. It was vicious,
Yeah.
There was a time a guy was like, "Hey, come meet me at the end of that block. There's someone there waiting for you." And I remember we called our bus captain. And then there was another time this truck, it came and they were like, "Come here. We have something for you. Come here." So, not safe.
Yeah.
But I will say, some of those kids, it was sweet meeting some of those bus kids and some of those bus families,
Yeah.
That was a
Yeah.
highlight.
Yeah. I mean, I did like junior church and I've always had a heart for children. So being able or like doing Awanas and like we would like that my former church would like run the vans and like, would pick up certain bus kids that like showed interest in Awanas and stuff like that. And so having that bond with them, because most of them want that mother and fatherly love that they're not getting at home. And so just to have that, like I totally understand. There were
Yeah.
a few times where I did bus, not really my thing, but no, I would still do it and occasionally, and it was cool. But like soul winning, absolutely. There's been times where I haven't been in the safest like area for where I'm at, um, but and also a dog situation, which was nuts. But yeah, I will say like not all IFB churches probably put someone in the circumstance with like it's not safe, but I know Hyles is or First Baptist Church is very well known in Hyles of the whole Chicago area and going and being dropped off and so many all day type of thing.
Yep, it is basically all day.
Yeah, I've talked with so many people of all ages, and they were saying like, back in the day, it was guns and gangs and you would hear gunshots like no other, and it was just terrifying. Definitely as a young girl too. It's not like you're with a big group of people and there's 20 of you. No, there's only a couple of you and you're going door to door and
sometimes just 2 of us.
Yeah. And you don't know who's behind the door. You don't know, and they don't know who's at the door. So it's a really, I don't know. I always say that I understand why people do so many in a way, but I also just feel like it's 2025 and there's other routes to go.
For sure there is. Another thing, it would be so cold some of those days. I can't believe we did this. We would go into the apartments and like cuddle up. And it's like, that is so scary that we did that.
Yeah, that is terrifying. So I do have to ask you, because I've asked a lot of people, since you did bus ministry, did you ever partake in swallowing a goldfish or any other animal?
Yeah, the goldfish. Yeah, they had us do that, and my first year I was like super pumped about it, and I'm sad to say that I like chewed the goldfish. But they have a big hype, and if you're a good lady worker, that's what they call the female workers. You're gonna eat a goldfish, you're gonna sing. If you're on the bus, you're gonna be having to talk to those kids. You have to always be like engaging with someone on the bus. And of course doing like the activities like eating a goldfish. I also heard that they used to give out like on Easter like little chicks, like little baby chicks. And like a lot of people were like, "Oh, that sucks, we can't do that anymore." It's like, you're hurting animals. Even the goldfish thing, it's
so I feel for you, even though I didn't do that, but Oh gosh, no. Yeah, that's that just shows though it's still happening in 2020. I mean, now it's 2025, but when you went, it was 2024.
Yeah.
So what were some rules that were different for you? Because again, you weren't raised in IFB, but then you went to, Hyles-Anderson. What were some things that stood out the most to you that you were just like, wait, this is not normal, but I'm gonna do it because this is the rules?
Um, I think wearing skirts, wearing robes, in the dorms, like the girls' dorms, like you can't really, you could wear pajama pants in your room, but you have to wear like a robe in the hallway. Um, I guess it was kind of weird having to wear a skirt to work, because when I was back home, I would wear skirts to school and church, but I didn't ever wear a skirt to work, and that was kind of like awkward because people would kind of like treat you differently, or they like, oh, that's a Hyles girl, you know.
Yeah. Um, I guess my question is because, a lot of IFB colleges and churches, around the world, are really big about numbers. And because talking about soul winning and just doing the bus ministry, how, I guess my question is, how many would you say that you probably did, the salvation, the Romans road, or whatever you would like to call it, just so that you could say, oh, I did this, or the IFB is well known for that. I led someone to Christ. I don't know,
Yeah.
big back
Well,
there,
it
but
doesn't have anything to do with us, but now
yeah,
I know that.
it's like but it's like that. Oh, I did it, like that good film. It's like, no, you didn't, but I mean, whatever.
Mhm.
How big was the culture around hitting numbers? Like, was it a lot of pressure for you guys?
It was a requirement. So every week we would have to fill out an activity report, and you would have to put down, you had to at least have witness to one person, so gone through the whole salvation plan with them. And you would have at least had to like go out a certain number of hours on your ministry. You had to record everything you did, which ministry you were in, um, when you went out soul winning, all this stuff. How many people you got baptized? There was a number for that. How many people you got saved? In the beginning, I was like try hard. I actually I think I did get some people to come to church. I don't think I ever got anyone to be baptized. Um, so yeah, it's a requirement to go out and go through the gospel. And of course, not always you're going to be able to do that. Like there were so many times towards the end, and even in the beginning, I would just put down that I did it, but I didn't. And I'm sure a lot of other people did that too. Like, because if you don't witness to someone, then you get demerits or
What?
points or whatever they're called. Yeah, if you don't witness to one person every week and you like put 0 on your activity report, you're gonna get points.
Wow.
So
Yeah, so like they're so big about like mega churches and all that. And they're like, oh, all they care about is the numbers and the people. And it's like, you're no better, actually. Like, all IFB churches are all about numbers. I mean, some of them, if depending on like how old school or whatever you would like to call extreme or whatever, less extreme, some IFB churches have it on the wall, like, oh, we had this many bus kids and ministry and this, whatever.
yeah,
So I shouldn't be shocked at that, honestly. Definitely given it's Hyles-Anderson,
yeah,
and then being like well known with the bus ministry. I mean, they are huge and well known for that, definitely in Chicago area and stuff. What kind of social dynamics existed between students when it came to like bus routes, ministry involvement, and like spiritual expectations?
the first thing is there was a lot of competition, which necessarily isn't bad. So like there's divisions, and then within the divisions there's routes, and you shout out your favorite division, you shout the division you're part of in chapel. So that's like the okay part. But then there's a lot of like, oh, that person's not a good bus worker, that person doesn't go out that much. And so like there's a little bit of students that kind of do that. Um, And then I even remember some of the boys, like there was a guy that didn't do bus ministry in Chicago. He did it more like locally, which was an option, but not many people did that. And he was like, "Oh, I hope he gets hit by a bus." That's just one thing I remember. So there was a lot of like that, and it was kind of like, put the front on, but then we're gonna be kind of nasty about it if you don't, if you're a lazy bus worker, or you know.
What would you say with the competition in the way of like, against each other? What would you say other were you expected, because like I noticed this at Heartland,
Mm-hmm.
Heartland Baptist Bible, I noticed that everyone always had to be joyful, even if like something was wrong. That pressure of having to show joy, you could never have like, I mean, like you have to be happy at all times. Was Hyles-Anderson like that too?
Yeah, definitely. Especially on the bus route, again with that thing, like you need to be engaged with the bus riders, the people from Chicago. You need to be talking with them. You need to be brightening their day, even if you're, running on 2 hours of sleep. And then at the college, I still listen sometimes to the college messages just to kind of like see what's going on there, and kind of like I can look back and be like, that's not right, that's not right. And I was just listening to, this just proves what we're talking about perfectly. I was listening to Roy Moffat, and part of his message was like, he's like, have you guys ever seen me down? Have you guys ever seen me sad? He's like, I have my hardships, but I'm I no one's ever seen me sad before. And then, he literally said in that message, like, you fake it till you make it.
You know what? You should always be up there. Upbeat all the time. How often should you rejoice in the Lord? Rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice. Are you the kind of people that you rejoice in the Lord always? If not, work at it. Seriously, if you're the kind of person, you're not an upbeat person, I'm going to ask a dumb question. How many of you know Roy Moffat somewhat personally? Raise your hand. How many of you have ever seen Roy Moffat in a downbeat, depressed, discouraged spirit? I mean, I can have some pretty tough trials in my life, but you don't know it. I didn't find that guy down. He could be the dumbest guy in the world and doing something stupid, but he could kind of look at it as, amen, praise the Lord, glory, hallelujah. And I'd rather you be that than, oh man, if you only knew.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that a lot too, definitely within the IFB and like my former church. It was like anxiety, depression. It's like all Satan. That's not real. You have to be happy. If you're not happy, then you must not be saved. Because if you're saved and you have Jesus Christ in your heart, then you can't
Mm-hmm.
upset or sad, and it's so unrealistic, and it's very damaging to one's mental health. um how did the expectation of being joyful and being happy affect your mental health?
So this also kind of ties back to like women at the college, but another kind of stigma there is like going along with always looking happy. They're kind of like, you don't want a woman that always looks grumpy. You want like a cheerful, happy looking, lady. So kind of that. And so if you want like especially a good guy to date you, there's just the pressure of not, you know, you don't want to you don't want like a guy to see you like that.
Yeah.
Or like, what if somebody's visiting the college and this is their first impression of it? You gotta like show how great this school is. Like, we're really proud to be Hyles-Anderson students. When you're at your job, they're very like, oh, some college students have made our school look bad. So when you're at your job, make sure you're being this like the best, most happy, friendly employee.
Yeah. Were there times where you felt like you couldn't be honest about any of like the mental health struggles that you faced going to Hyles-Anderson?
Yeah. Well, the first time I was there, there was a different dean of women. There was two dean of women that I like that was there. My freshman and sophomore year, there was one lady and now there's another lady. But I remember even going to the first lady and kind of being like, oh, can you help me with this? And it's kind of like, she like told me some things, and then I kind of walked away from that, like, oh, I guess even though they say they're gonna help us, I have to help myself, you know.
Yeah.
Like I came with her to her with like some things, and I kind of walked away from it kind of like, I'm just gonna have to help myself.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like a recurring theme, like they encourage us to go talk to them, but you talk to them and then you're like, that didn't really help me, and I don't really want to go back and talk to them. I don't feel comfortable talking to them again, you know.
Yeah. You don't feel supported. They're not
Yeah.
they're not equipped to handle mental health. Most of them are just, when you look at Hyles-Anderson, for example, right? Because we're talking about Hyles-Anderson, and we look at probably who's on staff and stuff, 90% of the people was born and raised there. So like
Yep.
they're just going by off what they're known, and they're just indoctrinated. They've drunk every flavor of the Kool-Aid plus added a little sugar on top. Like most of them, I will say this, most IFB people that are still in the IFB community movement, whatever you would like to say, they are genuinely good people.
Yes.
They just are really indoctrinated, because I once was like that, right? Like,
Yeah.
we both were once blind. Like, so I always have sympathy until they give me a reason not to have sympathy, in the way of like acknowledging that there's something that went wrong, acknowledging like, yes, I know that happened, but there's no but or anything. So then that I'm like, oh, okay, you're not indoctrinated. You see it for what it is and you accept it. So you have to agree with it. Like, that's how I view it. And there's a lot of people though that truly do not know, because they don't know you can't know something that you've never experienced, or like,
Yeah.
and most of them are brainwashed. They've never had a life outside of this, right? So it's kind of hard to miss something that you never had. And so with you though, you were not born and raised in the IFB, which I thought really stood out to me, because again, there was a lot of similarities on our phone call, right? Like the
Mm-hmm.
divorce aspect of it and stuff like that. It's very rare to hear someone getting a divorce in the IFB, because divorce is like a big no-no.
Yeah.
And
Which
so,
is not always a good thing.
yeah, and it's just an adjustment in general. And I know, like, you dealt with things, during the divorce, your mental health, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You go to Hyles-Anderson. And I would love to talk about, though, kind of what you experience at Hyles with your mental health. Since talking about mental health with Hyles-Anderson College, and because you are the most recent person that has reached out to me and like I've talked with, you left Hyles-Anderson in 2024. So like, this is how recent, guys. This isn't like a couple of years, like it's 2024. Um, and talking about mental health and the struggles of what you faced opening up, like not being able to get really an answer, right? Like they probably just threw Bible verses at you and just told you this is what you do, and you got to pray, you got to be joyful, right? You got to be joyful. Leaving, because you had multiple deans of women after leaving the first one, what was your experience with the second one?
The second one, well, first of all, she's a lot more strict on the girls, like, and there was a lot of write-ups. This started happening too a lot, where there was a lot more write-ups, and it's like, wait, why did I get write-up for this? And then you would go talk to like one of the ladies and it's like, oh, that was nothing, never mind, I'll take that off. So a lot of that was going on. I at first didn't have a problem with her, but I would hear like the other girls talk like, oh my gosh, she is so much like, and her daughter was also a dorm soup, and she was also like very strict. Like no one wanted to be on that girl's floor, which she's sweet. She's just strict, the daughter anyway. And so I kind of wanted to put my like trust in this dean of women, like I think I had a few counseling sessions with her. But then I remember she called me into her office one time and she was like, some of the women teachers are saying like you're kind of disrespectful in class. And I was like, what? So that was random. I didn't know what that was about. It was just super random thing because most people, most of my friends and stuff, like I told my one friend that and she was like, that's weird. Like you're pretty, you're like a quiet, pretty you know, I'm not really a
You're
rebellious type.
self-reserved, yeah.
Yeah. I like following the rules. So that was weird. And then I was just getting bogged down by classes and everything. I was failing a lot of them. So um going into my second semester, I was on winter break and I texted the dean of women and I was kind of like, hey, I've been thinking about doing online. Because I'm too like bogged down to come back. I kind of wanted to stay at home. And she was like, no, I think you should come back. So I was like, and she gave me like a whole list of reasons why. And even though I felt like tired of bus route, I felt tired of everything, she talked me into going back, you know. And I was also dealing with this like relationship. I'd gotten expelled before for kissing a guy, so I didn't really want to open up with it, but open up to anyone except like my friends. I didn't want to talk to any staff members. I was too scared because I didn't want to get expelled again and then have all that shame that I had before from the first expulsion. So there was this guy and he was kind of like on off. Our relationship was kind of secret. We were doing things that weren't allowed at the college. And he would sometimes be like, I'm gonna tell Brother King what we're doing. That's one of the guys in charge. I'm gonna tell Brother King what we're doing. And it would scare me and I'd be like, no, please don't, no, like begging him not to. So I was going like the mental struggle with that, like almost every like 2 weeks or something. So that was, but I had no one to talk to it about except like my friends. Um, I couldn't, I couldn't, I just had no one to talk to about, and it was really weighing on my mental health. And like, yeah, I shouldn't have been talking to him looking back now, but it was just me being a silly girl, I guess. Um, so what started happening is I was having a lot more nightmares. Um, and I've been having like I was having pretty bad nightmares since I was a teen. And I would have like sleep paralysis, which is where like if you've had it, you know what I'm talking about. But for those who have never had it, it's like you feel like you're kind of half between sleeping and awake and something's like holding you down. And if you don't know anything about sleep paralysis, you're gonna think it's like a demon or something holding you down, you know? It's really creepy night terror stuff. I was having all these night terrors. My roommates would be like, are you okay? You know, you kind of talk a lot in your sleep. You seem like you're worried and anxious about something. Is everything okay? I'd be like kind of like, yeah, everything's okay. But like my closest friends, they knew that I was kind of sad, a lot of the times and stressed out about this whole thing that I couldn't really talk to anyone about. So, and I had told the dean of women that I didn't want to really come back. I wanted to do online or take a break, and she said no. So I come back this is my junior year, second semester, 2024. And there's still bus route. I changed routes because I didn't want to be near that guy. He was kind of like comparing me to other lady workers and like saying that I didn't do a lot and like these other lady workers did. So I felt miserable. I felt like crying some days, but I couldn't cry when I'm on bus route. So I switched and it was kind of good, but still stressful. I would like skip some days. And then what ended up happening is one night I just woke up and I felt scared. I felt weird. My roommates were kind of like, Grace, are you okay? You're talking in your sleep. I went back to sleep. I looked at um, my dorm door, and I saw something opening it. I saw someone like standing there, something weird. I got up. My roommates and the girls next door were kind of like, what's going on with her? She's having like weird sleep stuff. I'm like, I just have to go to the bathroom. So I start walking down the dorm hallway to the bathroom. Like there's a bathroom on every dorm floor, just like one communal bathroom. And as I'm walking, the hallway is like stretching and like it feels like it's long. I feel like someone is like chasing me. And I start to realize that like something's really wrong, and I felt super scared. And I go into the bathroom, I'm just looking in the mirror, and it felt like something like came out of the mirror and like jumped. I feel like I could see it, but also at the same time I couldn't. It was a very weird experience. And I was like, I must have been crying or something, because another girl that I was acquainted with came in, and she invited me into her dorm room, and they're like, okay, are you okay? Are you okay? And my friend, one of my friends was in there, and I was like, you need to start reading the Bible to me, like right now. Like, please start reading the Bible to me right now. And as she was reading, I still was like, I was shaking. I fell on the floor. I was like scratching on the dresser drawers. And I was like, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? And by this time, like every girl on the dorm floor must have been like awake. And they called the dean of women's daughter, and she was on the floor below. She came up and she was talking to me, and she was like, what's going on? And I was like, I thought I was being like demon possessed or something. And I was like, I don't know what's going on, but I know that I'm a Christian, and I just want God's help like right now. And so we were talking, and I also was explaining that my chest really hurt, and that I felt like I was heavy breathing and everything. So because of that, they did call an ambulance. And as soon as the ambulance guys got there, I kind of like felt like the evil oppression that I was feeling or whatever went away, and I kind of was acting more normal with the ambulance guys. And they put me in the ambulance, and they were like, well, your vitals are okay. Do you want to go to the hospital? And I was like, yeah, I do. And I was being like a little more talkative than I usually do, and like a little more sarcastic and funny, which is not like me. It was very weird. They brought me to the hospital, and they brought me to the emergency room. I was waiting there, and I was like, still like being a little bit like, I just was acting goofy. Like I just had like more of a goofy, sarcastic personality, which is not like me, but I wasn't feeling scared or anything. I was just feeling silly. And I was in the emergency room. The doctor came and talked to me. And then the dean of women was there with her daughter, and they had their Bibles, and they were like trying to talk to me, which is, the doctor must have been like, what the heck is this? And he was like asking me questions, and I was like, I need psychiatric help. Like I told him that because of the questions he was asking me, because he said my vitals and stuff were fine. And the dean of women was kind of like, oh no, we got this, you got this. And I was like, no, I need like psychiatric help. So they put me in a place for a week, and there I had time to cool down, and I didn't have any more nightmares when I was there. Like for the first time in a long time, I had a peaceful sleep. They gave me some medication that helped me, and I would get phone calls from my friends, and they were like, Grace, everybody here is saying that you're demon possessed, that you aren't really saved, that you aren't really a Christian. And it was like, and then my other friend, she was like, yeah, and that guy, like they all knew him. There was something he was bad. They're like, he took another girl to the Valentine banquet. I was like, so that was rough. And while I was there, I just had time to think, and I came back, and there was rumors like, oh, she was demon possessed and everything. Also while I was there, the dean of women like sent me like 3 Bibles, and the nurses were kind of like, why are you getting all like this stuff? Like, why are they sending all this stuff? Which I didn't even use. But I came out of there, and it was like, oh, I felt a little more like I didn't care so much about what people thought. Like I felt like that for the first time. But also at the same time, in my head, I was thinking, oh, maybe it was something that I was doing that was wrong, and I'm just going to do better, but I don't really care what others think. So it was kind of like that. And I remember just happy to see my friends, happy to be out. And I was like, oh, I need to restore my relationship with God now that I'm back. So for chapel, I'm going to really pay attention. Like my first chapel message back, I think. And I was like praying to God to help me. And the chapel message was, again, Roy Moffat. And he was like, and I had my notebook, I was ready to take notes, I was ready to, hear God's word. And he was like going through heroes of the faith, Joseph, Daniel, just, heroes of the faith. And then he was like, but there's one hero that doesn't get talked enough about. There's one guy that, he's overlooked a lot. And I was like, in my head, I was like, he's either going to say some obscure character that there's maybe like one or two verses about, or he's going to say Jesus, because he didn't say Jesus in that list, And so I'm like waiting, and then all of a sudden he's like, Jack Hyles, hero of the faith that doesn't get talked enough about. And I was just like, nope. And the whole rest of the chapel was about him and Jack Hyles, and how Jack Hyles did this, how Jack Hyles did that, how he was. It wasn't just him bragging on Jack Hyles, it was him bragging kind of a little bit on himself about his time with Jack Hyles. And I was like, no, that's not right. This is, and something just snapped in me, and I was like, this is not right. And after that, I would kind of we were required to go to chapel, but I wouldn't go to chapel as much, because I was like, this is not right.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. There's a lot to unload.
Yeah.
So going back to, what you experienced, and, the, going to the hospital, and, being in there in the psychiatric side of it for a week. Did anyone visit you? I know you said that they sit in Bibles and stuff, but did anyone visit you, or?
I also got like a Lego set from some of my sweet friends, and like a stuffed animal and like some flowers.
Well, like, did John Wilkerson or any of them from, like, I know that they are First Baptist, but he's also the president of Hyles-Anderson. Let's just, whatever. But did anyone, staff member, anything from the school, like, ever come and check on you or call you, or?
My friends are calling me. Maybe I think maybe the Dean of Women tried to visit me, but the visiting hours were like very restricted. The only person that was able to come visit me was one of my like guy friends from my church back home. His brother is married to my sister, so I'm very close to their family. He was attending Hyles at the time too. He doesn't like it anymore, but he came, even though he's a guy, he's not allowed to come visit me, but he came like secretly, and he came and visited me, and that was cool to like have a friend come visit me. But he was like the only one. Some of my friends did try, but it was like,
I think the main question is the fact that John Wilkerson and his wife, who is, head of pastor at First Baptist Church of Hammond, but also is tied in with Hyles-Anderson College, they didn't check on you. And you were
no one really, except the Dean of Women, but no one really talked to me about it even afterward.
Nobody on staff, nobody checked on you, nobody came and visit. And I understand like there's weird visiting hours, whatever, but the fact that all they did was just send Bibles or whatever, and I'm not saying that that wasn't nice or whatever, but it just probably felt at this rate like, oh my God, nobody cares about me. Like, I'm in here, or did you get peace? Like,
the thing that I thought is that if everyone's saying I'm demon possessed, why didn't Pastor Wilkerson have to come, or like someone from the church? Because I know there's people that claim to perform like exorcisms and stuff. Why did no one ever, like, even though people would tell me like, oh yeah, you were demonically influenced, why did no one like come and like try to get the demon out of me or anything? Like, if it's that serious and you guys are going to talk about it and like accuse me of it, why didn't no one? That's what's weird about it to me. Like, first of all, why didn't I need an exorcism? And also, why didn't I not, like, I don't know, that's what's weird about it to me.
Yeah, no, and that is a really good, point is you have, I mean, it's just like also with, speaking in tongues, I always say an interpreter has to be there and stuff like that, in that way. And so you would think that if someone is demon possessed, there should be someone that sorry, to come and perform an exorcism or just kind of like be there for you. I think it just proves another example of how isolating they can treat you and make you feel in a way too. You know, looking back, what were some coping mechanisms, that were healthy or unhealthy that you developed while, being at, you know, Hiles or really in that environment?
I think one weird thing that I would do a lot to like help when I was feeling like I wasn't being like godly enough or like I wasn't thinking right is I would just like sit in my room or go somewhere and just like almost like just try to mm, like beg God to help me. Like, oh, I'm gonna like focus so hard that I'm gonna reach God and I'm just gonna ask him like, God, please show me like what's wrong, what am I doing? Um, which kind of like caused me a lot of stress because I just kept asking over and over again. And I wasn't really seeing like anything change.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people I've interviewed with on here so far, and I've also just talked with, off record, that a lot of people who have left the faith completely in the church and stuff like that, they've always said, I always got told from a little kid that if you ask, it shall be done, and I never heard anything from God. No, nothing was done, no signs, nothing. So therefore, he's not alive, and I don't believe anymore. Situation. I've heard that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Understand that because there's been times in my life where I have asked God, like, okay, if you do this, then I'll go to church. Or if you do this, I'll do that. Like it's like this deal with God, right? And I had to learn that God doesn't work that way, and
Yeah.
God's plans and will for my life um, is obviously different than probably what I imagine. And so when something doesn't go my way or what I've asked or whatever, and he does something complete opposite, it doesn't mean that he's still like this horrible person. I've had to learn that the coping mechanism from the IFB in that way. I've had to learn from that mindset that, oh, he didn't deliver, so he's not good, or he didn't deliver and I did something because I did something that he's not delivering, right? Like that mindset. And it goes back to being a good Christian woman and, never wanting to upset God. So I totally can relate to you on that, Grace.
It's like I feel like I was gonna say this too. I wasn't it's not even like praying to be a good Christian. It's more like praying with saying like, oh, make me a better Christian, but you're praying, you want the desire to be a better like fundamentalist, a better IFBer. That's what I think was wrong with like my prayers because I just wanted to be like all of them here,
Yeah.
And I don't I my personal belief is like I don't think God wants us all to be like these people, like Jack Hyles or like we're not all cut, we're not like built out of the same, like we're not molded the same. We all are different. God made us different.
Yeah, and I promise you, Jesus would not approve of Jack Hyles, his
No.
behavior. Jesus would not approve of what John Wilkerson is doing as head pastor for his Baptist Church of Hammond. And Jesus definitely did not make Jack Scott go do that to a young girl. So I need people in the Hyles world to wake up and realize that God would not approve of any of those things. And So I guess my question is, how has your perspective on faith and ministry and all that, shifted since leaving Hiles? Did you go through did you go through a deconstructing phase, or have you kept your faith, or?
I would say it's been a process of destructing, restructing, because the chapel messages, obviously I would try to live by them, but they just weren't improving my life. I wasn't seeing any results. My life wasn't just like the other people that I wanted to be like. So I kind of I remember my perspective started to change after that hospital experience. I kind of started to change from there. um I was also like a lot more conservative, and now I'm trying to be like more open-minded to things. I used to be like, so this is the way, and now I'm like, um there's a lot of different perspectives and it's good to hear from everybody's. But in regards to faith, um I mean, I've been a Christian longer than I've been in the IFB, and I remember being a child and having the faith in Christ and the belief. And I think since I was raised in it, it's kind of like bad to say, but like that's something I hold on to as like I want that to be true, because you know we live in an evil world, and it's nice to think that there is a God, so there's someone to like punish people that are corrupt. People, especially people that pretend to be close to God, but they're using it to like for their own benefits.
Yeah.
Personally, I've kind of been drawn. At first, I was a little bit drawn to Catholicism, but I've seen some like flaws with that. I've been very drawn to Orthodox Christianity. I feel like it's very close to what original Christians were like after Jesus, and just like it's not. I don't like Christian nationalism like at all anymore. I don't like how Jack Hyles thought Christianity was like 1950s America.
Yeah.
I don't think that reflects Christ at all, because Christ, you know, he was, well, first of all, he wore a robe, and they make fun of Catholics and, you know, people, priests that wear robes. They say it's a dress, and Jesus wore that, and Jesus had long hair, and Jesus had a beard. And that's definitely not acceptable to them. So
Yeah. No, that's true. I mean, Jesus did not have a hard part, sir, and Jesus did not wear a suit and tie, and
yeah.
all that. Well, what would you, want, current students or parents, at places like Hyles-Anderson, like to understand about like what goes on there?
Um, I think a lot of them know, because a lot of them, like a lot of the parents went there themselves, so they're totally okay with it. Um, Along those lines, I kind of wanted to bring up the Creation Expo. I think I mentioned it to you, because this is also something weird that happened there. Is that okay
Yeah,
if
totally.
I talk about that? Because it also kind of has to do with students and parents.
Yeah,
Um,
right ahead.
John Wilkerson, there was like this big old hype, because for the first time they were inviting these people to talk about creationism, which, whether you believe in creationism or evolution, I feel like both could be true, possibly. Um, but there aren't a lot of IFBers that like, it's not really, they believe it, but there's not enough people to like talk about it in like the IFB, you know. So they had someone outside of the IFB, I think there was like a scientist, like some expert people, come talk about creationism, and it was hyped, you know. And I remember being there, and there was some, I think there was like one white guy, and the rest were like African American people, older. And I remember the two older women and a guy went up and sang, and they had their long skirts on and everything, but the women, when they were singing, they were swaying a little bit on the platform. They were like swaying, you know. And I thought it was lovely. I took a video of it for my grandma. I sent it to her because their singing was awesome. I was like, this praises God. But then I heard like people were like, oh, that was so bad, that singing, and they were swaying on the platform. I was like, they're two older women just singing, you know, two older African American women just singing, you know, and that seemed kind of racist to me, and also kind of petty. And then they also had a problem because for when they were talking about creationism and science, they put an NIV verse up on the board. So a lot of students were like kind of like hissy about it, and I heard like some people were like, wow, this is so cool learning about creationism. And then there were some just like pastors' kids that were like, this is horrible, I can't believe this. And they were reporting back to their parents. And the creationism people, they were saying like, oh, the college students are here are so nice, but they didn't know that the college students were talking bad about them. And so that whole creation exhibit, expo, whatever, happened. And I guess like my roommate told me that her cousin, who also attended the college, was like complaining about it to his parents, and like, so there was a whole bunch of kids complaining to it about their parents, and the parents ended up calling the church, writing Pastor Wilkerson, someone like wrote an article online about how one of the guys, they showed an IV verse, and then one of the guys had long hair, and two of the women were kind of like swaying when they were singing on the platform. So under all this, they were like, oh, Hyles has compromised. Oh, another thing, they were Methodist. They were teaching about creationism. They weren't teaching any doctrine, anything. They were teaching about creationism. And so because of all those things, Pastor Wilkerson got up and was like, I'm sorry this happened. Because all the parents put all the pressure on him and everything. And it's kind of like, now everything I know that Pastor Wilkerson has let happen, he'll bend the knee to that and, you know, apologize and like cave in, because he let a Methodist and a guy that had his hair like under his ear come, and he'll like sincerely apologize. But you know, all those other things, all those like Robin's story, that guy that's there at the college that was a predator, he doesn't care about that. So kind of weird, and also kind of culty. And that also kind of opened my eyes, like, this is very, like, they don't let anybody else in just to talk about creationism.
Really, to anything. I mean, they're not open-minded. You're not allowed to question. You're not allowed to definitely question the man of God. You're not allowed to go with questions. And if you do, it's just like, here's a Bible verse and see you later. Like, they're not equipped. Preachers are not equipped in IFB. Like, they're not.
Open-mindedness is like seen as like a worldly, like, oh, that's worldly philosophy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To kind of wrap this, you know, episode up, if you could go back and speak to your younger self, you know, entering Hyles-Anderson College, go back to freshman Grace, what would you tell her now?
I would tell her to go for 1 year, because I did meet a lot of, I'm still friends with, actually some of my friends also see like the holes and everything, and they're not there anymore. So I met a lot of lovely people, so I wouldn't want to, like, you know, lose them. And so I made friends there. But I would tell her that don't try to like impress these people. Don't like, you don't have to do like all, like, just like give yourself a break. Don't feel pressured to do everything the way, like, to be a perfect IFB girl.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I would say.
Yeah. I've always said, like, I've always told people, you know, God's love, you don't have to earn it. Like, God loves you. And it's not like you have to do a checklist to earn that, you know? And so I've always said that. And that was something for me to understand and grasp. Like, no, Jesus loves me when I do this and this. It's not that if I do this, then I'm like one step closer to him. That's not how
Yeah.
So no, I appreciate you though, Grace, you know, coming on today's episode and just talking about your experience with Hyles-Anderson, a little bit about some of like the things that you had noticed that are still like that went on even decades ago. That you look back and you're like, oh wait, that happened in 2024. Definitely eating the goldfish still happens, everyone. So but yeah, no, Grace, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing, you know, a little bit about your Hyles, and who knows what the future holds for you. But I really admire your bravery and wanting to come on and share your story.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was exciting, and it was nice to, like, hopefully I'll never have to think about this stuff again. I can get it out of, like, I got it off my chest. So
yeah, well, you know what, I've always said that as time has gone on, definitely like for me and my experience, you know, as a host, talking about it and just meeting people, whether they were in the IFB or not, just talking to someone and saying like, hey, yeah, I went this way, or like I was born and raised in this cult, and it's led me to a lot of cool opportunities and conversations where I also can end up, let me use the IFB term, witness team people and showing them that like there is a hope, there is a way out of the IFB, and you can still lose everything, but it's worth losing everything because the piece that you have is so much better. But yeah, no, Grace, thank you so much for speaking on today's episode. You can stay tuned for next week episode where I actually talk with another former Hyles-Anderson, but we also talk about Mental Health May is the new series for May. And my next guest, Sean, is also a therapist. And we talk about, what made him get into the therapist education and wanting to be a therapist, and also about his Hyles experience. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, I'm really excited to kick off Mental Health May. And also just for, for listeners out there, Mental Health May is the last series for season 2. So I will be making an announcement for season 3. But yeah, stay tuned, and I'm looking forward to next week's episode.